Paul, thanks for coming in. Tell us a little bit about your background and tell us about how you got involved in the ABA.
Yeah, I'm the son of a Liverpool docker. Mother was a cleaner and had 2 other jobs at the same time. Lived in a place called Toxteth, which ironically was known as Dingle for whatever reason, probably because the amount of Irish that actually moved over into Little Dublin, which is Liverpool. And so we lived there till I was 10 years of age, and then moved out to a place called Speke, big industrial area, lots of jobs at the time. And in the 70s, that took the knock, really, in terms of big industry, and unemployment was on its way up in Liverpool, along with all the rest of the social problems that occurred during, the Thatcher government and the rest of it that went through. But my involvement in sport really came, I was playing football at a reasonable standard, trialled for Liverpool, Liverpool boys, and also captained the school.
What sort of year was that?
You're talking 65 through till, sort of 72. From then, I'd got involved in boxing. My family had been in the sport all their lives. My father had competed, and my grandfather was a coach at St Malachy's in Liverpool.
Wow.
So it was in the DNA, really. And out of that, my grandfather had the likes of a guy called Peter Benasco, a great African fighter, Dick Tiger. He was involved with all of those in the early years. Yeah, they went on to win a world title. There was a rich tapestry involved in the sport. And then I got involved with coaching, started an apprenticeship, got involved in coaching, and went to Speke Boys Club and worked through there, really, through the ABA programme. Got some qualifications, produced a wedge of national champions I was lucky to work with. A family called the Wall family. There was a great deal of those young lads went on to international concepts and international performance. Like called John Hyland, who went the Olympic Games as a bantamweight and won 2 ABA titles. And then all of a sudden a job became available in Liverpool, which was a boxing development officer's role. And there was never one in the sport before, anywhere in the country. Because Liverpool at that time had a guy called Norman Wilkinson, who was head of leisure services, who was a groundbreaker, really. He looked outside the box.
Right, okay.
He had a business acumen, and he looked to develop people and empowered people to do better. And it was Norman's inspiration that said, I'm going to set up a development programme. So he had an exceptional gymnastics development programme, swimming programme, which produced the likes of Beth Tweddle, and also the gymnastics produced Beth Tweddle, the gymnastics, sorry. Swimming was the Jamesons, and that was brother and sister. And Andrew now is the commentator on BBC Sport for swimming. So it's a small world.
Yeah.
And out of the development work I was luckily involved with, produced the likes of all of the Smith brothers, Tony Bellew, Derry Matthews, David Price, whole host of Olympic and Commonwealth medalists and indeed world champions in the end. So, and from there, all of a sudden, it took me 35 years to become an overnight success there. And a job came available as chief executive with the Amateur Boxing Association of England, which I took, and then developed GB Boxing, bringing in Rob McCracken, and the rest is history, really, in terms of what's come through since 2005. I had a great deal to do with Amir Khan.
So now you're based all around England. You're coming more into London.
Yeah, I was, and for the last 25 years, that's been my hub. I've worked out of London at least for 2 decades, that's for sure. Unfortunately, I was the sperm of the devil itself at one time, because I actually moved the ABA out of London, which had been here since its inception. But there were magnificent facilities in Sheffield, which benefited, and indeed still are benefiting, the boxers themselves and the athletes. So it was a no-brainer, Ben. Instead of setting the ring up on a Friday night for a 2-day session at the weekend, taking it down on the Sunday night and everybody going home, we had a permanent base.
Absolutely.
A world-class state-of-the-art facility. And that was all funded by Sport England and UK Sport. They saw the value of the sport and what the sport could bring to the national concept. And it had been underinvested in for a long term.
But when you done that and you brought it to Sheffield, was there any opposition to that?
There was, I think, was silent opposition, but it was a matter of change. We've got Donald Trump probably talking now. My first 100 days, and I'm a great believer in business and in any walk of life. Where you're given responsibility to deliver something, you've clearly got to try and deliver it as soon as you can. And those 100 days are exceptionally important to put your stamp down on whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because, that really does set your mantra for the future and the vision that you've got. You've got to articulate that and share it. And if change needs to happen, it's got to happen within that, short period of time, because then you can get on with your plans moving forward.
Where's your involvement then with the Olympics?
The Olympic Games, I was involved with IEBA, which was formerly the world governing body. And I was also treasurer for the European Amateur Boxing Association. And the Olympic Games, I attended in Beijing and worked as a technical delegate and other roles within the world governing body. So, it became a broader relationship and responsibilities, really, once you became chief executive. At that time, you had the flexibility to be involved with the world governing body and indeed the decision makers, which enhanced the opportunities for British boxers and athletes going forward. And we did use that influence at times.
What happened at that stage when Mir Khan was the only person in the Olympics?
That was before my time, thankfully. Yeah. I came after Amir had, had such a great Olympic Games and won a silver medal against Kinderlin, who had met over in Cuba previously. It was a well-funded organisation at that time, but I wouldn't say it was the clubs at the time, but the concept of what was going through in terms of the actual quality of the boxers, there was potentially a drop-off in standards. And at the elite, at top end, you are measured by, as in business, outcomes set against medal attainment. And UK Sport had funded that programme over a 4-year period, and the return wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
So it was a matter of looking at how that return could be reinvested again, and then also develop the sport over a 4 and 8 year period. And I wrote a couple of whole sport plans which delivered those changes.
Yeah,
and in terms of numbers, the numbers went through the roof in terms of participation. And indeed, percentage-wise, we were probably the fastest growing sport. Post Greece and Athens, when Amir, won his medal.
Yeah.
And then a host of local authorities got involved in a mixed economy approach then.
Yeah.
So it was about bringing other people's money to the party as well, where we created a plethora of, I think we had 12 at one stage, development officers right across the country. And they had a great impact in terms of raising participation.
Yeah.
From raising participation, the cream will always come to the top. And that's when it started to happen for Beijing.
Yeah.
On the back of that, I saw an opening for women's boxing and took a leap of faith in producing a women's boxing development officer, a girl called Rebecca Gibson, who did a magnificent job at the time. And with the funding that we'd accrued, we produced the likes of Nicola Adams, Natasha Jonas.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent.
They've all come through since then.
Yeah.
And they were part of that first cohort of new women coming into the sport, and the rest is history.
It was a big change in the sport, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was at that time, because money made a real difference, Ben.
Yeah.
And as in business, if you haven't got the investment to put in, you can't get out at the top unless you put in at the bottom. And we invested heavily in community and participation.
Well, getting the girls to participate as well, because obviously, again, it's a different...
Well, there were people within the organisation as well who, felt it abhorrent that women should even participate. But, it was a growing world of women's involvement in sport. They were achieving so much on the athletics track, so much in swimming, in gymnastics.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden, women found a sport that invigorated them, that was engaging, which, met some of the facets that they wanted out of life, improving their health and well-being. And as a byproduct of that, they got involved in competition.
Yeah, I was amazed because we went to a show together when the women were boxing, and quite a few of the girls boxing there were from the forces.
They were, and the forces and the police to a great extent to begin with. But then from that, the club programmes took over, because once the clubs got involved, that was the doors opening across the country to include and involve women. And I suppose to a great extent, the work that we did with women's boxing at that time made all of that difference. And, you know, you can see now even Samina Toussaint, Caroline Dubois, you know, all of these young girls have come through, and women have come through the sport and have developed onto the world stage, and indeed professional boxing, improving their lives and becoming household names, as well as iconic figures in British sport.
And getting into the Olympics.
And the Olympic Games was the big one. Yeah. Where the men's weights were at 11 at the time.
Yeah.
That was reduced to 8. And there was a kerfuffle over that. But the men's weights then were measured down or measured up to ensure the categories were a bit bigger in terms of weight tolerances. And the women were given 3 weights within the Olympic Games. That's now moved up to 4, of course.
Yeah.
And moving forward, it's been an exceptional opportunity for women in sport. Indeed, you know, the likes of Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn now are putting on all women's professional tournaments. It's that popular.
Where is the women's boxing going now then? Is it in the Olympics? Are they going to get more weight categories? Or?
No, the Olympics are hamstrung and tied in terms of the number of medals they can distribute across sport. That's why you have, you know, sports dropping out of the Olympic Games, because a host nation has an opportunity to put in, I think it's 2 or 3 chosen sports, and they will also take out some sports from the previous games if it doesn't suit, you know, what they wish to present. So there is a finite number of gold medals only that the IOC, you know, approve on a 4-year programme.
Okay, so going forward, where are you now with the boxing?
Yeah, I'm still working across, and happy to be working with London Boxing through a sponsorship programme, through the Crossan family and the Power Day programme.
You're involved heavily with the charity side of things.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, for sure. And through the Power Day Foundation, I'm happy to be given time there, which has been, you know, it's been I'd say a really, really good opportunity to make a difference in London. I mean, Power Day as a company are probably the largest family-owned Southwest company of England in terms of waste and recycling.
Yeah.
And they've invested heavily into community programs.
Oh, they're excellent at that.
And community outcomes.
Yeah.
And people see from their website as well, like, you know, the value that they've added in some of the toughest and most marginalised communities across London, negating, you know, peer-on-peer violence through the programme, you know, drop the knife, pick up the gloves.
Yes, it is brilliant.
With their own health strategy, and engaging with over 10,000 young people coming into the sport on an annual basis, and working very closely, I must admit, with London Boxing, with Lenny Hagland and his officers, who do a magnificent job on a day-to-day basis, managing and administering, you know, the 130 clubs across the capital. So the outcomes have been that Power Day have invested on a mixed economy approach with business, sponsorship, companies, commercial, public finances coming together, invested probably over £15 million in projects over the last 6 to 7 years, which is a seismic sum.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
And every penny that's been raised and brought together under that mixed umbrella has been distributed to clubs directly. And Power Day have been at the crux in the centre of all that's happened there, with Mick and Ed Crossan, you know, leading from the front. Mick being an ex-boxer, Ed boxing before as well.
Yeah.
They know the value of the sport. They've been around the sport for long enough, knowing the likes of Mick Delaney at Dale Youth and others. Then really, you know, they've had a rich, very, very rich investment into the sport right across London. And the benefits are shown again in London alone.
Well, it's fantastic. You see the young people getting involved in the sport. It's actually really great. And the areas they're in, you know, a lot of them need that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the work that they do and the clubs are doing themselves, you know, is breaking down all that postcode rivalry.
Yeah.
I mean, even this evening, I'm off to a meeting with Dale Youth, you know, volunteers. and volunteering myself, you know, to put time in there. And it really is all about seeing what can come out of, you know, a community amateur sports club that delivers for young people. I mean, there's been some research work done, which is interesting, in terms of what the value is to the social purse of a young person being involved in organised sport. It's somewhere in the region of about £2,500 a year in savings to the public purse, based on the fact it negates truancy, alcoholism, drug abuse, antisocial behaviour, bad school attainment. So the value, you know, there is a real value in sport, a real value.
How are you attracting these young people into the clubs?
It's through a myriad of opportunities and, you know, development programmes, participation days, taster sessions, working with other organisations such as local authorities. And, you know, I know they tend to get a bit of a kick in at times, but coming from a local authority background, when local authorities do invest in their own, and we realise they are under financial pressure at the moment, but when they can find a little bit, and you can bring a little bit more to the party in terms of match funding, they do step up and they do make a difference, because so many of the local authorities are actually subsidising these clubs through rates or rents, with outcomes which they wish to see in terms of numbers in participation and so on. So some of them have service level agreements where they've got to attain so many participants, you know, to get that recognised level of subsidy and support. And there are some local authorities in London who are exceptional in doing that.
Do you find that the boxers who've had success come back and help in these projects?
It's ironic, isn't it? You know, we're talking the week of other boxers coming back, and, you know, you've got the big event the weekend with Eubank and Ben, a generation thing again, Ben. And yet it does happen. Yeah. You know, fathers put their time in, move on, carry on coaching, kids participate, but they do come back. Yeah. And it tends to be that their children then come back into the sport as well. So it happens in boxing, it happens in a great deal of other sports. Once it's in the DNA, and I don't know what it is, but there's something about, you know, the atmosphere, the smell of a gym. Once you've had it, you know, it never ever loses you. Is
there still new clubs opening?
Unbelievable. On a ratio, you know, which is staggering to say the least. And it's all built on that concept of success.
Yeah.
Because again, the more you put in at the bottom, the more you'll get out at the top. And the success that the country's having at the moment, and the benefactors of all of this success, when you do look at it, who really is, you know, benefiting more from this?
Yeah.
It's probably the top end of the pro game, because the investment that's being made by Sport England, by government, by local authorities, by UK sport, and government being at the centre of it all, is invested heavily in the sport. And those better participants have been to Olympic Games, now go on to win world titles, such as Anthony Joshua and others, Luke Campbell and others, who all came out of that cohort of athletes that we had at the time in the second whole sport plan after Amir Khan. Then they've moved on, but they've benefited. They've now got new lives. They become household names.
Yeah, and they give a bit back.
They give back, yeah.
That's
they give back.
Thing.
And, you know, even the likes of Anthony Joshua, you know, he never lets you down in terms of when needed. You know, he'll be there for you. And
which is excellent,
He puts into his own club as well, his own former club at Finchley with Sean.
Yeah.
And does a magnificent job there as well. And even, you know, tonight I'm meeting up with Dale Youth, as I mentioned earlier. And George Groves has just become now a trustee of the Dale Youth Boxing Club, so he really is going to be the future. And, you know,
it's great,
he's
for
part of the exit strategy,
and it's great for the kids to see that.
Yeah, for
when
sure.
they see these people taking part, it boosts them up, doesn't it?
Well, and he gives his time freely in the gym as well.
Yeah,
you know, he's in there at weekends, and many others do exactly the same.
Yeah. Just give me, for people who don't know a lot about boxing, take me through the process of how you would get to the Olympics. I'm a young lad, I've started in a club. What's the competition procedure to get to that point?
Yeah, to move through into the Olympic Games, I mean, it's starting. I mean, I introduced what was called Kid Gloves programme, and that was where it was non-contact. Then from the Kid Gloves program, you'd move through into skills bouts, which we created in the ABA, which was a softer introduction into the sport, because it could be tough.
Yeah.
You know, you had your
It is
first
a tough
bout,
sport, of course.
you lost. You had your second bout, you
Yeah,
lost.
yeah.
You become very, very disappointed and probably, you know, move away from it.
Yeah.
But the concept of a softer introduction without the fear and the panic of weighing in for the first time with a crowd and being under that pressure and parent pressure as well, we took that away.
Yeah.
So the concept was get these skills bouts on, softer introduction. So you go into club boxing, and then as a consequence, if you developed enough, went into national championships. You would have to go to the senior and elite championships within the country, win those, become part of the England programme, become part of the GB programme, and then work your way through.
Do you know what's excellent though is that they do get these bursars now, so they do get some funding to help them with their training, so they can give that time.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have got that a long time ago.
No, and Power Day saw an opening where some talented young people were falling through the gaps, and they decided to produce an annual bursary programme where 10 individuals are given funding and clothing and equipment to see them and help them through the year.
Yeah.
In any way that they possibly can. And that's been a great boon as well.
Yeah.
And from that, it's really, you know, delivered that concept of opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Just moving on a little bit, what do you think's happening with the professional game now?
Pro game seems to be moving in an Arabian direction, doesn't it? Really, I mean, there's so much funding.
There's a lot of money in the
Middle
sport,
East,
isn't there? Yeah.
and sports big money, sports big
Yeah.
dollars. The first 90,000 seater boxing tournament or fight, George Groves and Carl Froch at Wembley. Nobody thought it could get bigger than that. It's not got bigger, but there's more money involved because the fees are there, because it's now moved to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And the likes of, Warren and Hearn are now going to the Paymaster, and the Paymaster is the Arabian opportunities in Riyadh and other places.
And they've done, they've both done well.
Yeah.
Warren, the sport's in quite a healthy place at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think they're looking, at the next tier, the next plethora of those who are coming through. And there are some talented young boys coming through at the moment. But it goes in cycles as well, Ben.
Yeah.
There's ups, there's downs. And we'll know after the next Olympic Games where we stand. But we'd be hoping that, London will have, 2 or 3 representatives in the next Olympic Games. In terms of Power Day, with the 3 ambassadors, that's Damar Thomas, Patrice Muglazi, and Sasha Hickey, who's the first female to be involved in that particular process, which is unique. There is not another company in London or around the country indeed, who have a bursary programme and are investing so heavily in these top class athletes at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, because otherwise they might not be able to do it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully they're on the UK programme as well, through UK Sports on the GB programme.
When did all that come into play then?
That come into play in 2008, 2009. The individual countries, I brought them together under the concept of the British Boxing Association, which was like drawing teeth and pulling nails, getting Wales, Scotland and England into the same room, to say the least.
Yeah.
But there was an appetite for change at the time, and we did get them together and we produced the BABA. And that for the first time was a catalyst of saying, the best of British will participate and will start to represent England in the Olympic Games without any political influence at all. And then from that, we needed a new attitude towards how the sport would be delivered for those particular athletes on a very highly focused performance pathway programme where fine margins used to make all of the difference. So we needed to bring in the very best. And we did that really in bringing in Rob McCracken, who really, transformed the programme, came with an excellent pedigree within the sport himself, as a boxer himself and as a coach. He was a coach of Carl Froch at the time. And, his demeanour, his responsibility, his discipline, and also his methods have made a big difference in the sport as well, and produced so many Olympic medalists on the way through.
Is there a coaching program?
Yeah, there's a coaching program right through from England through to, a GB program where they're included on even through to IEBA now. But it was unique in coaching education at the time. We were lucky enough as a country to have a guy called Kevin Hickey, who's a former teacher in Blackpool, who was national coach at the time, and he really did produce what was the encyclopedia for boxing coaching at the time. He was of Irish descent and background as well, and he produced really the first, coach education program and influenced the world really, because he was one of those who were trusted by the IOC and IEBA to go to different countries and educate others in terms of coaching within the sport of boxing.
Because it is important, because these people are giving up their time as well, and these clubs, without the coaches, they're nothing.
Without those Pied Pipers, Ben, there's nothing. It's like having a football coach, and it's like having a youth coach in a rugby team. Unless you've got those inspirational figures who open up the gym on a wet Monday night,
absolutely,
and are there on a wet Wednesday as well, right through the week. And then not just the club nights, it's actually putting themselves out to go to tournaments as well. And, there's an old saying, I remember taking my first coaching course, and it was delivered by another national coach at the time, Ian Irwin. And he said, we anybody we get involved with will probably become boxing widows in time. And probably never a true saying was said at the time.
It's true, because you're taking the boys out for bouts, you're taking them out to different clubs. You've got a little program about the refereeing, because I think people forget that all these bouts are refereed.
Yeah, for sure. And the referees have a development program as well in terms of standards, in terms of qualifications.
And where are these people coming from? Ex-coaches?
It's coming from ex-coaching, it's coming from parents, it's coming from people who are interested in the sport, get involved as timekeepers, judges, referees, and then move on to regional, national opportunities then. And then the series of qualifications becomes harder, as it's, no doubt you'd understand.
Yeah, so let me just ask, before you go, because I know that you've got lots and lots of things, the swimming, can you just run me through that? Because you're now involved with other charities, and the swimming one's quite important to you, isn't it?
It is, and it was really through Mick Crossan had got in touch with two ladies, Kate and Ali, who run the British Down Syndrome Swimming Championships. And they'd approached Mick about maybe Power Day sponsoring the race. Anyway, I met up with them at some stage just a couple of weeks before COVID, ironically, and the championships were destined for that year, 2020. Didn't go on, of course, because of all that was happening. And Mick, and also through Power Day, and indeed Kelpray, coming out of COVID, as two companies who are partners in a great deal of work in construction, building projects, decided to fund the British Down Syndrome Swimming Championships, the first one ever. Okay. And that happened in 2022. And that's grown and grown. I mean, the last 3 years have been incrementally world records being broken by Down Syndrome swimmers. And the concept of where it wanted to go was always the drive that these, magnificent athletes from a wonderful organisation and lovely people who are professional in their working lives, but well as professionals in delivering what they do best, which is excellent events, have a mantra and a wish to be included in the Olympic Games in the future, because there's more participants in Down syndrome swimming than there possibly is in some of the other disabled swimming sports or swimming categories within the Olympic Games. So that's a challenge.
Yeah.
But they've started to, should we say, knock on the right doors at the moment, and people are starting to listen. The quality of the events, the times that these swimmers are putting together is exceptional, and they are totally committed. And yeah, with British Down Syndrome Swimming, we're looking to make a difference in the long-term future as well. Indeed, Power Day have signed up to another 5 years to support the programme on the way through.
So, before you go, Paul, what if people want to make a contribution, or they want to get involved in any way in things like this, who should they be looking to contact?
I'd suggest going to the Power Day Foundation website and Power Day Foundation
Have a look on
info.
there.
Have a look on there. See what, as a company, Power Day provide, and then from that, we can work through what their interests are, where there is mutuality, and then also, hopefully benefit communities going forward.
That's excellent. Thanks very much for coming in, Paul. It's been a really good conversation. And it's also, it's enlightened people to what people do outside of sport, because they only really see what's going on. They don't see the people like yourself who are in the background and making all these things work. So I think really, really important. So thanks for coming in. You are going to come in again because we've got so many things to talk about. And thanks for coming in. Thanks for your time.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye.